Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shore.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Same-sex marriage legislation, privacy at work and the bridge in Laxey were all popular topics for discussion this week. But before we get to those, the dredging of Peel Harbour was also a talking point. Here's Stu Peters.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Was the dredging of Peel Harbour something that needed to be done speedily? A parliamentary committee says the Department of Infrastructure almost completely ignored government financial regulations during the dredging of Peel Harbour. The Public Accounts Committee investigated how the Department of Infrastructure contracted out the jobs of dredging silt from the marina and disposing of it in a landfill site last year. The report is highly critical of the department, saying the project had been mishandled. Alfred Cannon MHK says the report will be laid before Tynwald Court this month. But Infrastructure Minister Phil Gaughan has defended his department's actions. Was it important for the dredging to be carried out as quickly as possible? Was it an urgent scheme that needed just to be sorted? Or should more time have been taken over the issue? Let's go to the lines and see what Rob makes of this. Hello, Rob.
I think it's a job that had to be done. I think if they'd went through all the regulations and all the red tape, we would have had problems now that hadn't been done with the heavy rains that we've had. So I'd quite be said that they got the job done and they avoided the red tape in the end.
All right, fair dues. Thank you, Rob. So get the job done seems to have been the priority as far as Rob's concerned. That seems to be the Minister's view on this. It was important to get the thing done and sorted. Let's see what Jill thinks. Hello, Jill.
I think it would have been totally unnecessary if they had dredged Peel Harbour and Douglas Harbour at regular intervals during the years.
Yes.
I mean, I have never, until they did the building and altered Peel Harbour, I've never known any dredging take place.
I can't remember. We talked about it in great detail at the time, and I think that people said that it used to just flow out to sea naturally, the silt. But I can't remember whether or not there had been some dredging that had been taken place over the years.
It doesn't flow. It builds up over the years.
Yes.
And then, if they do what they did in Douglas Harbour and just drop it outside the harbour entrance, it gets washed back in again.
Yes.
Get the same problem.
So a bit of prevention would have been better than the cure, you think?
I think so, yes, because I don't think it would have been as costly.
Yeah.
I know it would have cost over the years, but I do think it would have been worthwhile. All
right. Well, to an extent, that's been wise after the event. Given the situation that pertained, which is that it had to be done, do you think the Minister and the Department were right to just crack on with it without making sure that everything was done according to the rules and regs, or do you think that they made a bad mistake there?
Well, when you consider how long it's taken them to make their minds up about Douglas Prom, I rest my case.
OK, thank you very much, Jill. A couple of texts in. Not only has Gaughan gone against the rules, but to make light of it is a disgrace. Totally arrogant to think that he's above the rules. Time he was out, says Dave. The dredging was a reaction to a desperate situation that had developed over a number of years. What needs to be investigated is why this was allowed to happen and what is being put in place to stop it happening in the future. That from Kevin, which kind of echoes the view that we just heard on that one. The only reason Mr. Gaughan is sorry that he's been caught breaking the rules. OK, Mr. Gaughan trying to cover up again. It's no wonder the people of the island don't trust politicians whatsoever. It's no wonder young people don't want to get involved in Manx politics. Nobody trusts anything these ministers say. Stuck up in their ivory towers, says a different Dave. Let's go to the lines. We've got Wilf on from Ramsey. Hello, Wilf.
You already know my views on it.
Yes.
But I can add a little bit to it. These things, as they call them, they shouldn't have been put there in a place in the first place.
The flap gates and stuff.
You should open the gate and let it go, and then there's no more problem. It always went to sea.
Yeah.
There was dredging done in both harbours, but only now and again.
Right.
With the old dredger that they sold, got rid of, and ended up with the crap they've got now. But anyway, it's not Phil Gaughan's fault. He has got to answer for the government.
Yes.
And the government said they wanted this thing from the word go because they didn't know what they were talking about. Anybody knows if you put a gate across or anything across the harbour, where's the silk going to go?
Right, yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's getting held back, and it's got nowhere to go, so it just piles up. Then you're to the expense. This thing in Peel
and in Douglas has cost astronomical money. I tried to find out one time how much it cost, but I couldn't get anywhere. Nobody seemed to know anything.
All right.
It was all kept under wraps. If you could find out how much it would cost, the people of the Isle of Man would say, no, stop it right now.
Yeah.
It wants to be finished with altogether.
Right.
It's
okay.
absolutely ridiculous from the word go.
All right, so what's the benefit then of having these marinas? Just so that it's somewhere nice that people can moor the yachts?
John, what it is, there's they put boats in, and people who can pay. I'd like to know how many people owe for the previous year's fares for having their boats in there.
Oh, right, mooring charges,
of them haven't
yeah.
paid. But anyway, that's beside the point.
Okay.
It was to get a lot of money out of a lot of innocent people for putting their boats in there. If you put them against the wall, you're back to normal harbour dues. They will let you have it there, but you can't get out.
I see.
You can't get out of the harbour because you've only got a window of 2 or 3 hours. If you're lucky, you've got to go over a tide, and then you're stuck out there. If you wanted it on a pontoon, then I don't know how much it was. I think it was £400 a metre or some stupid thing like that. Just to sit there and grow weed on the bottom.
So the idea then was that it was going to bring in revenue because people were able to bring boats in and park them up there and pay big mooring charges or whatever they're called.
Yeah, well, I'd like to know how many boats comes per year.
Okay.
There'll be a few coming at the old boat show that they have once a year in Peel.
So you think that they ought to just...
how they have to pay over the top to get in there.
You think that they ought to just open these gates and let nature take its course. But what would happen to the boats that are in there now? Would they have to just disappear?
No. The proper boats, as I call them, that will take the bottom, fine. Anybody who wants a stupid yacht that's got to stand on one leg, which is the keel, and will fall over, well, they shouldn't have that boat. They should take it somewhere else.
Right.
They should have a proper boat if they want to sail out of the harbour.
That's like saying that if you've got a pickup truck, you're all right, but if you've got a sports car, forget it.
Well, not really. I was never in favour of a sports car either. Anything you had to get on your knees to get in. And if you're driving along, you're looking at the back axle of a bus or the flowers in the hedge. I was never in favour of that.
All right, Will, I think we've got a good idea of where you stand on this. Thank you very much for your call. Phil Gordon should be forced to resign without pension for the Peel fiasco. That from Jamie. Phil Gordon and his mates in the Council of Ministers should just be allowed to do whatever they want. MEA illegal loans, Sefton loans, Mount Murray, etc., etc. Of course and indeed, these are all simple matters that a simple mind can surely equate to driving 31 miles an hour in a 30 limit. Simple logic is there for all to see. Leave the poor guy alone to get on with things and that. Thank the Lord that we have such simple minds in government, according to Albert. Yes, tongue-in-cheek there, I think. If Messrs Gordon and Black had any sense of honour, they would have resigned by now for ignoring financial regulations. When I was working in government, any breach of regulations meant severe punishment. Why should these two get off scot-free? Also, anything Mr Gordon is involved in always goes pear-shaped or costs the taxpayer of this island a fortune. Just loves to throw money at anything as long as it's not his, says John. Don't know if that's fair or not. Is this nitpicking or more red tape? Treasury is already too busy to help answering questions in Tynwald or get the rates and means testing issues sorted. Do they really need more to do? Do we need to employ more bean counters or do we actually need to get more things done, says Alan. Hi, I like Mr Gordon's analogy about a little bit of rule breaking is okay, about 31 miles an hour in 30 zone. Let him not forget, though, that a little bit of corner cutting makes aeroplanes fall out of the sky. Well, that's a very good point, actually. Also, how far do you go? That from Graham. Thank you, Graham. Stu, it's correct that a single contract was broken down into smaller parts. That is a gross and blatant evasion of the financial regulations which have evolved to protect the interests of taxpayers. If Phil Gordon condones such action, he should resign forthwith. What he should be doing is ensuring that disciplinary action is being pursued against all officers implicated. That from John W. These regulations were tightened up after the MEA debacle. I think this is very serious. Mr Gordon shouldn't be trivialising it or making a big joke out of it by comparing it all to breaking the speed limit. Laws have been broken. Get the police involved. The law is the law, says Neil. I don't know that it's that strong. Someone should tell Mr Gordon that rules and regulations apply to the removal of silt just like anything else. That's from John in Ramsey. I still suspect the panic in getting it done quickly was created by potential insurance claims from boat owners due to grounding. Now, that's a very good point. I wonder if that had something to do with it. We have a vote. If we use it, we vote for someone in government to act on our behalf. Wish people would stop moaning when something's done. If anyone can do better, stand for government. Well, yeah, but that doesn't stop us from scrutinising what's being done. And, if rules are set down and somebody decides to just ignore them, then I think it's worthy of discussion at the very least. I was amazed listening to Phil Gorn this morning suggesting that those who ignored financial regulations did little more than ignore speed limits. If I ignored the FSC rulebook, my employer would be taken to court and could have the business closed, and I'd certainly lose my job and reputation. Any court in any jurisdiction would not accept a similar argument as this Minister of Government is suggesting. Heads should roll. It's not the fact the rules have been broken, it's the fact that nobody's ever held accountable, says Boris.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
What are the political issues this year as the island approaches a general election? That's something that 3 prominent backbench MHKs discussed on Sunday Opinion at the weekend on Manx Radio. Douglas East MHK Chris Robert Shaw, Michael MHK Alfred Cannon and Lib Van Leader and Douglas South MHK Kate Beecroft joined Roger Watterson on the programme. What are the most important issues in your view? Is rebalancing the budget in the short term the most important thing, or in the long run is the public sector pension issue something that should be tackled sooner rather than later? Are the two intertwined? Let's have a look at some of your comments. The backbenchers keep talking about representing the people. It's impossible to represent all the people. I'm people, and they rarely represent me. If they give their voters all they want, the country would be in a really bad way. I'm afraid they talk a good game, but heaven help us if they run the country, says Liz. This Tynwald, including the 3 MHKs just interviewed, have had 5 years to solve these issues. A lot of hot air has been spoken by a lot of them, but nothing I've heard makes me think that any of them are capable of coming up with many concrete ideas, let alone solving the issues, says Alan. Mr. Robert Shaw has changed his tune now. He's not feeding from the comb-in trough. Electioneering, quite obvious really, says Dave. I don't know. He's saying things that politicians don't generally say, and I think it's quite interesting to see the 3 people who were on Sunday Opinion sort of breaking ranks and actually telling it like it is, or as they see it anyway. Stu, can I just say that as a self-employed small business with rented property, that this government, through one way or another, is slowly strangling my business. I'm at a crossroads now as to whether or not to continue trading. Every decision they make seems to go against me, whereas those making a fortune are left to continue doing so. I agree that this government are in it for themselves and not the people, but what can we do to change this? Nothing, I'm afraid, and as Frank would say, that's a fact, says John. I want to hear less about the poorest in our society having to tighten their belts further and further. Fairness should be the key word for the next election. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, is it fair? Question. Council and ministers have a meeting to discuss something. The big question should be, is that fair? Fairness should be the key word for the next election, according to our contributor. Policies to take the poor out of income tax, regulation of utilities, affordable housing schemes. Let's let everyone thrive on this island and protect our quality of life. Yeah, some questions that people might ask. 1, would you increase taxes in order to ring-fence the additional revenue for the health service? 2, do you support removing air passenger duty to generate passenger growth at Isle of Man Airport, thus allowing anyone, particularly visitors to the Isle of Man, to commence long-haul journeys from the Isle of Man at a reduced tax rate compared to journeys originating from the UK? It would match the rates of Jersey or Dublin and result in passenger growth. Would it? Are you convinced it would result in passenger growth? 3, how do you expect to achieve the promises made in the absence of a party system? Good questions. Very good questions. The answer to your question is simple, Stu. When we had an excess of money, the government expanded accordingly to soak up available funds. It's now desperately defending that position by trying to get you and I to keep them in the style to which they've become accustomed, says Paul. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that, and I think you make a cracking point there. Let's go to the lines because Sylvia always makes a good point. Hello, Sylvia.
Well, I think you know my point of view about the government, and I honestly think, and I'm old enough to have watched it go pear-shaped since they introduced this ministerial system.
Yes.
And it's putting too much power into too few hands and undermining, I think, the people we voted for who are so-called backbenchers. Where did that term come from?
Yes.
That's another one that's imported.
It is, yeah.
I mean, it's totally wrong. It wants to go back how it was.
So you'd have boards and it would be Tynwald that agreed everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how it was supposed to be. It was good enough for 1,000 years.
Well, on paper, it seems to make perfect sense that, we have all our politicians there to sit down and agree to the things that need doing.
Yes.
So quite why it has to be split the way it is, and like you say, have a council of ministers to decide on the way forward. The only concern, I suppose, is that I wonder if anything would be done ever.
Well, it was done well enough before you discovered the Isle of Man, and I've lived here. I'm Manx, I can remember it. And when we had Charlie Crucian and Irving, you never got any of this nonsense. I mean, they were what they were.
Yeah.
And they both had a sense of humour, but they were both very firm.
Were they simpler times, though? Easier times? Was there more money in the system?
Money in the system. They were so poor in the Isle of Man, nobody had anything.
Oh, right. Oh, you're going back more than 30 years or so then.
More than 30 years, but they managed, we all managed, we were all bonded together, things were passed that benefited everybody, not a handful of. And I feel the Isle of Man's just being used. I don't care what they say, it's being used by other people. And you do have a good point when you say about importing these people who have been trained to spend their time and their routine and their right-hand man and the left-hand man.
Yes.
And the chairman and that's all the rest of it. They've been trained under a different system.
Yeah. Well, I would suggest that...
Don't amalgamate.
Yeah, anybody that can get hold of it just needs to look through the government phone book and just look at some of the job titles in there, and you think, what? For the Isle of Man, do we need somebody to do that?
Yes, this is it. So I think kick the ministerial system into touch.
All right.
And start again.
All right, good stuff. Thank you very much, Sylvia. It's always nice to talk to Sylvia. Let's see what Ken makes of it. Hello, Ken.
Just things about consultations, pensions. We didn't have to employ some consultants that cost us nearly, over $500,000 to tell us what we already knew about the pensions.
Yeah.
Why are the police exempt from the current thing? The politician a few weeks ago said about because they've got special cases because they need their experience. Well, how much experience do you need to be a policeman these days? The other thing about the rates, what happened to the rates? That was supposed to be redone, but that didn't happen because they didn't have time.
Yeah.
And locally in Peel, thankfully, there's some move on sewage. When Peel got left out of the Irish system, everything went towards...
Well, there have been a number of things, haven't there? I mean, we were going to have means testing so that, if help was needed, if benefits were needed, they went to the people who needed them, not people who don't need them. And that to me is it's part of being fair as a society. But, that's another thing that, oh, no, we've not got time to do that.
I don't know. Is the radar thing working at the airport yet?
I don't know.
The current people are getting things through the post about signing up. There's no poster in Peel Town Hall to say, about the elections. Please make sure there's not much publicity. There's been a bit on the paper, on the radio, but there's other things like that. And also pensions, of course. Who benefits from the pensions? Current pension arrangements, MHK, stop civil servants. So, turkeys and Christmas springs to mind.
Doesn't it? Yeah. All right, Ken, some good points there. Thank you very much for your call. Bob called, the biggest issue is everything that's costing the island money, like the public sector pensions. They need to keep a tighter rein on spending. Look at the Peel Silt and the money that's cost and will cost. The TT World Series money, the bridge at Laxey, which is going to cost £750,000. They need to get a grip on it. Without proper scrutiny of what's being spent, there's a problem. There's a crazy amount of money being pouring out of government. They've just sent another 50 grand to Syria. They spend it like there's no tomorrow. Rob called, the problem with pensions is that they're index linked. People at the bottom are having to pay for it all. They've been spending like dishwater over the last few years. All we want is an honest, open, fair and decent government where the rules apply to everyone without favouritism for the rich. You only have to look at the debacle that planning has become as a prime example. If there's rules, then there's rules for everyone and they have to apply to everyone in a fair manner. Yes.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is full public consultation always necessary when it comes to government carrying out infrastructure work? The debate over a new bridge for Lower Laxey continues to divide residents. Initially, the Department of Infrastructure said the replacement structure would be ready for TT week, but this was met with outrage from residents who demanded more public consultation on its design. Yesterday, the chairman of Laxey Village Commissioner said nobody that he knew wanted the works to be rushed, but two local business owners disagree. And yesterday, residents were given the chance to discuss the village's proposed new bridge. 4 designs were showcased by the Department of Infrastructure in the Commissioner's offices. Is full consultation a necessary part of any project like this? Or are there times when government departments should just make decisions without invoking the full consultation process? Let's go to the lines. We've got Michael on who I think wants to talk about this. Hello, Michael.
I think they should get on with it. We elect politicians to be politicians who run departments which have highly paid consultants and engineers and all that. That's what they're there for.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think they've got 4 different proposals on this one. One of them looks like half the Laxey wheel upside down, and others are much more simple. And I suppose that because this is, a very old bridge, they can't just replace it as it was, which would seem to be the simplest solution. Yeah,
the simplest solution would cost the most money. I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. The simplest solution in your case would be to replace it as is. And that would be horrendously expensive, as you say.
Yeah.
But times change. It's not what it used to be. It's a new era now, and it needs a new bridge. And as long as it looks nice, and I wouldn't be bothered myself if I wouldn't want to give an opinion. I would be quite happy to let the people who are paid the money to do the job, let them get on with it, and it'll be done then.
Fair dues. All right, thank you very much indeed, Michael. That's Michael's point of view on it. What about you? Another text on Laxey Bridge: the repair and strength of the supporting side walls will be required irrespective of the cosmetic appearance of the bridge itself, and so should be progressing now, and may well be in progress. Any stone facing on walls should be able to be done with the bridge open, even if it's only for single file traffic. Thank God it's not the Laxey wheel. They would never agree on what shape to make it, says Neil. Let's go to the lines and see what Jane makes of it. Hello, Jane.
I make of it that there's a gentleman who did the Quag Bridge, which is a really nice bridge, and he also did the bridge going down to Maryveg.
Right.
Why don't they just call him in and get him to sort it out?
And is he a local fella, or did they get him?
He's a local fellow, yes. He lives in the north of the island.
Yeah.
And I am quite sure the government always call him in when stonework needs to be done.
Yes.
And he is excellent. And I just don't know why they didn't call him in, let him have a look at it and build the bridge like he did at Maryveg.
Well, maybe they have. Maybe he's involved in it. We don't know, do we?
I don't know. No, we don't know. But he would make a superb job. And he could have started, I'm sure he could have started it before all this messing about and planning permission. You've got to have a bridge. Come on, it's an emergency.
Yes.
I suggested when it first went that they got across and got a Bailey Bridge to put it in to begin with.
Oh, was it you that suggested that? I thought that was a great idea.
I don't know. Well, a long time. I don't think I phoned up and suggested.
Oh, right. Oh, well, somebody got onto the programme and said that you can buy these things for about 35 grand.
Yes, and it could take a tank, a Centurion.
Take a tank, yeah.
Yes. So, there are ways and means of doing things, but I'm afraid this government sit on their bottoms and do nothing.
Well, yeah, all right, but let me just play devil's advocate. I mean, Laxey is a lovely village, and it's full of all sorts of, historical buildings and things like that. So, if you did put something there that was completely out of place, would it not spoil the amenity of the place? Would it not spoil the look of the place?
Well, any person, it would spoil. I mean, a Bailey Bridge going in was a makeshift thing to do.
Oh, just a temporary
get the village joined up.
Gotcha.
While the other bridge was built properly.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
And it would get away with this problem of TT coming up. Yeah. And the bridge then could be done as quickly as possible, but the Bailey Bridge would join Laxey up.
Yeah, get everybody moving again.
I mean. It would be a pure temporary measure to get the village joined up and everybody moving about and not worrying about various things. They are exceptionally good bridges, are Bailey Bridges, and then the other bridge could be built as and when.
And are you in Laxey, Jane?
No, I'm not.
Right, okay.
I have got very good friends who live in Laxey, so
Right, so
I
you
go
spend
up
a bit
there
of time
quite
there.
regularly.
Yeah.
It just splits the village in two.
Yeah, I believe
Totally.
so. All right, listen, it's great to hear from you. Give us a call again. It's nice to hear from different people.
I certainly will. But this is something that I felt as soon as it happened, I thought,
Crack
why
on.
haven't the government been on and got a temporary Bailey Bridge in, and then they can decide how they're going to redo the new bridge.
Good point. Thank you very much for making it on the programme today. Stu, at the end of the day, a bridge is a bridge. Well, build this and stop procrastinating. As a business, we use Laxey Laundry to assist our business, and how amazing they've been. You wouldn't have thought anything had happened, but it has. Those businesses don't need a consultation process. They need a bridge. Can you imagine if Noah had faced up to these problems, no ark would have been built? They might have taken a bit too long to go through the consultation process, certainly, yeah. Now, are we going to have the animals 2 by 2? And exactly which animals and where do they all go? Let's go to the lines. We've got Tim on. Hello, Tim.
Well, interesting. There's a bridge across the River Eden near Penrith. It got washed away, I think, in 1968.
Yeah.
And they put a temporary pontoon bridge in there, a single track with traffic lights, and that was meant to be temporary.
Yeah.
48 years later, it's still there. So what I would say is, if there's money's been allocated, and it's get on with it. Otherwise, priorities move on, and before you know it, it'll end up, it never gets done properly.
Yeah, so just get it done and don't worry too much about the aesthetics.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, obviously, it wants to be right. People living in that area have a right to have a view on it. Absolutely. But bottom line is, if the money's been allocated, because that money, there's plenty of places that money will need to go. If we get some hard frost now with the state of the roads will be in a terrible state of potholes because of all the water we've had. The money will soon get used up somewhere else, so get it done. It will, yeah, I think you're right, with the frost coming as well, yeah. All right, Tim, nice to hear from you. Another new voice on the programme today. That's great. Stu, I'm a civil engineer. Oh, good, an expert. I can assure you a prefabricated solution is far and away the cheapest and quickest solution. If they want to clad it afterwards, then that's all well and good. Put the big jolly on stop before it gets going, and that's from Hampton. Sadly, the new bridge has to be a single because of flood defence issues. Arches slow the flow of water and cause debris build-up. That from Tony. OK. A temporary bridge would only prolong the traffic restrictions, traffic lights, barriers, cones and fencing that is restricting access to businesses and homes in the surrounding area. We need a proper bridge up fast and get the area operating properly again, says Sarah. OK, well, that's fair. Robin Peel, it needs a bit of style. They've got to do something in keeping with the area. Yeah. The DOI have a habit of making mountains out of molehills, the latest being the bridge in Laxey. You'd think they were replacing Tower Bridge or that golden one in San Francisco. As the businesses in Laxey are saying, just get it done. I'm afraid, though, I think they'll only drag their feet even more in future after the stink over the Peel Marina fiasco. I fear it'll make them even more cautious about doing jobs quickly in the future. That from Alan. New film idea for the Isle of Man films, A Bridge Not Far Enough, Tish. When the bridge is done, will they make it a toll bridge, says Kev. Yeah, don't give them ideas, Kev. Current debate on the Laxey Bridge, typical of the island. If the DOI just go ahead and appoint a contractor, which could be done, they'd end up in front of the Public Accounts Committee because another contractor would start whining because they didn't get the job. If the design consult, get planning, go to tender, appoint contractor, etc., the department's criticised for taking too long. They're restricted heavily by the rules, regulations, procedures, etc., that all the Wingers insist must be in place to allegedly protect the public purse, where I believe all these regulations and procedures add cost. What chance does the department or any department have? Impossible situation. No, I don't work for the government, by the way. Good. I think that makes some really valid points, actually. The urgency with which the businesses of Laxey are urging the DOI to just get on with it misses a major point that they'll regret. The plans shown yesterday show an 8-metre wide bridge with a 3-metre wide footpath, viewing platform facing the harbour, plus yet more Chinese granite sets and single-file traffic control. Planners need to reject these wasteful and safe plans and insist that the most basic, simple and economic replacement is provided. Thank you.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should employers be allowed to monitor what their workforce is up to during working hours when it comes to messages? A European court's ruled bosses can read the private emails and messages of employees sent during work time. Judges decided that firms do have a right to see what people are doing on company time after looking at a case involving a Romanian man sacked for using Yahoo Messenger to contact his fiancée. But the court did warn that unregulated snooping is unacceptable. So, should employers have the right to monitor workers' private messages if they're sent during the working day? Or should workers be entitled to expect some privacy? Stu, according to the paper, this ruling applies only to the use of company equipment. This is not a problem as personal messages, web surfing should only be conducted on your own personal equipment. Any company should have the right to ensure that their computers or phones are not abused. Too many employees are sitting at the desks playing games, says Howard. Yeah, just looking at the story on this, and the judges only discussed the work account in this ruling, apparently. The device used to send the messages was owned by the employer, and the judges didn't elaborate on whether it would have made any difference if he'd been using a personal device. One of the 8 judges disagreed with the decision, saying that a blanket ban on personal internet use was unacceptable. Going forward, he added, all employers should clearly explain any rules that would allow them to check on their workers' online activities. Stu, are we talking private emails on private address or using work's address? If the former, this is appalling and the thin end of the wedge. Stu, I would have to agree if the court's findings relate to the use of the company's IT systems for this purpose. However, if it was my personal tablet, etc., well, and smartphones these days do an awful lot, don't they? I don't think it would be relevant apart from using the firm's time for personal business. I suppose you could always have the scenario that your employer suspects that you're possibly compromising the integrity of sensitive commercial information. In that case, you could also be challenged in relation to the possession of other information storing devices. Would the same ruling be applied to the use of the company's telephone in the firm's time, says Chris. It's down to trust and common sense, Stu, says Al. If only, Al. I mean, that's the way that I would like to work. I'm sure that's the way that you'd like to work. Trouble is that, you just can't trust everybody, and not everybody's got common sense. And if you're fairly lax about things like that because you trust everybody to do the decent thing, there'll always be somebody who pushes the rules or breaks the rules, and then you've got to get a little bit draconian about the whole thing for everybody to make it fair. But wouldn't it be a great world if it could be down to trust and common sense? Yeah, that'd be lovely, Al. Most people have smartphones now, so if it's private, use your phone. If you use the works computer, your boss should have the right to see it. It is his, says Gary. Stu, basically the general rule at work is do not use office equipment to communicate externally to friends and family. However, this should be clarified in IT governance guidelines. Could employers have computer access for external use in restroom areas, says Tony. Thank you, Tony. Stu, I totally agree with personal use of emails and internet shouldn't be permitted in company time. Too many liberties taken, in my opinion. I also think smokers shouldn't be allowed fag breaks. Smoke at lunchtime in your own time. After all, you can't smoke on planes and flights. Can be 4 hours plus, says Paul. Well, I'm not convinced by that argument, Paul. I mean, yes, smokers sometimes take a break, but, other people find other mechanisms to take breaks, long loo breaks or whatever, or standing at the coffee machine nattering away or whatever. So let's not vilify smokers necessarily. If you're at work using an employer's computers and servers, the employer has every right to monitor everything that you're sending. If it's so private, use your own time, says June. OK, well, I think most people seem to think that this is a reasonable application of the law, a reasonable ruling. Do you think that your employer shouldn't have the right to snoop at what you're up to? Rob called, how did we ever manage without emails? Do you know, Rob, I sometimes think about that. When you think about the day and when you had to go and use the phone box or whatever. I was watching a period sort of film the other day where, nobody had mobile phones. It's like, how did we manage before we had mobile phones? How did we ever manage without emails? You're at work to work, you can send personal emails afterwards. I do think it's a misuse of work time, says Rob. I don't believe people should text or email personal messages while at work, unless it's urgent, of course. Yeah, you wouldn't have a show if everybody was banned from communicating during work hours, Stu, says Cliffy. OK, well, yeah, the hand that feeds you and all that. We would probably never have built an empire if we had had email and phones. It took 6 months to communicate with London, so they just got on with it. Imagine if they had email and had to OK everything with the idiot in charge. Total disaster, says John. I'd not thought about it like that. Yeah, Stu, an afterthought. Many telephone contact centres and offices will not allow communication devices into sensitive areas. This is for data protection, but if, for example, you have, say, family issues, then the team leader will allow access to your phone and the switchboard will monitor inward calls, say a child is ill at school. That from Tony. OK. Just a thought, the world and his dog are now insisting on doing business with tech, so how is anyone who works supposed to sort their private things, obviously emergencies, out other than in office hours? Yeah, not sure. A good compromise which I followed at work is to limit email and phone calls to emergencies and to make access freely available in lunch breaks. That from Stuart. That seems a pragmatic solution.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the introduction of same-sex marriage legislation in the Isle of Man inevitable? As we heard in the news yesterday, a challenge is being made on religious grounds to propose changes to Manx law, paving the way for gay marriage. Christian campaigner and former law lecturer Peter Murcott has vowed to fight the marriage brackets same-sex couples close brackets bill as it prepares to start its passage through the House of Keys. Mr Murcott is urging MHKs to reject the bill, citing what he says is the Queen's supreme duty to uphold the Christian faith and politicians' responsibility to ensure that she does. He's also unhappy that a public consultation held last year on the bill was cut short. But the Manx Rainbow Association says it's not surprised at the comments of an arch critic of gay marriage. Lee Clark from the MRA, which represents the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender communities on the island, says Mr Murcott is entitled to his views, but he can't understand some of his comments, such as the claim that allowing such a bill to go through would be the beginning of the end of democracy. So, is the introduction of same-sex marriage legislation something that you think is inevitable here in the Isle of Man? Is it vital that the island keeps pace with neighbouring jurisdictions when it comes to issues like this? Or should the island follow its own path? Let's go to the lines and see what you think about this. And our first caller is Pete. Hello, Pete.
I personally believe no matter who you guard or what you believe in, it should be given to the people to vote upon this.
So it should be a referendum, you think?
Whether you're religious or not, or what your religion is, doesn't count. It's what the majority of the Manx people or people in the Isle of Man believe in.
Okay. All right.
So I'll leave it at that. That's my personal opinion.
Yep. Thanks for calling in. Do call us again. It's nice to hear from you. Stu, while people can't help who they fall in love with, and I hate promiscuity, be it heterosexual or homosexual, while I have no problems with civil partnerships, it's like registry office marriage. I don't think churches should be forced to marry gay people, says Anne. Okay. Doesn't matter what anybody in the Isle of Man thinks, the UK is driving gay marriage. Do you seriously suppose that even if the consultation came out against, and Tynwald was totally against, that we actually have any say in it? Of course not. UK runs this show. Peter Murcott's wasting his time, says John. I wish they'd hurry up and legalise gay marriage. I've been engaged to my boyfriend for a year now, and that's from Richard of Andreas. Stu, can I just make it quite clear it's only Murcott and a tiny minority of hardliner Christians. The vast majority of us Christians have no problem with this at all. Don't tar the rest of us Christians with the same brush as Peter Murcott and his firebrand thinking. That from Dave. Tynwald should not decide on gay rights. It's common knowledge that the Chief Minister's gay and he carries a lot of votes in the Keys, so this would not be a fair decision. A public vote is the only way. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. For Tynwald to make this decision could be seen as a government making a disinfection, to suit personal needs, a decision I suppose, to suit personal needs and not that of the population. That from Pat. It's a disgrace when, because of personal reasons, Mr Bell finds this bill more important than the Freedom of Information and the Disability Acts. Yes, I think that's a view that I've heard a few times lately. He's going to push this through before the next election and our ministers will follow like sheep. No morality within our government anymore. When the Chief Minister says jump, they all jump regardless. Okay. On same-sex marriage, I feel that there needs to be a referendum which could be carried out in September alongside the general election. It's true. The spokesman asked the question, which God? Whereas, although there are many religions, most agree that there's only one God. I don't know if most agree. I would think that certainly many, if not most, probably agree that there isn't one. Homosexuality is still a criminal offence on the island, and in the past people have been convicted of committing this act. So how can government pass the rights to a gay marriage if it promotes criminality? It doesn't. It isn't. It's not a criminal offence in the island anymore. So, no, you're wrong there. You're behind the times. It was changed a long time ago. The Bible is not the word of God, but the word of man that's been edited and altered over the centuries to suit the beliefs and laws of the time. I agree with that. Now, a lot of people won't, but yes, I think I buy that. Stuart, sorry, but after over 50 years of courting, marriage and being together, I agree with Mr Murcott, and I think that it's demeaning to people who've lived their lives accordingly. All right, Colin, well, it's a point of view. Stu, if the Gay Marriage Act comes in, will churches also have to marry divorcees? I had to have a registry office wedding, but I still regarded it as a marriage. So what is different with the civil partnership? Asks Roz. Good point. Does legalising same-sex marriage mean that the couple are then entitled to all aspects of the law, i.e. tax law, right to divorce, etc.? I think so, yeah. I'm not an expert on it, but I think so, yeah. This really does my head in. If people or the religious types don't want same-sex marriage, then don't do it, but don't try to dictate to the masses who couldn't care less about your imaginary friend or your archaic views. The church is losing control, and this is just another attempt to hang on to what little power they have. Live and let live, I say. Good, yes, live and let live, very keen on that, and treat others as you would be treated yourself. Love in all its forms is to be applauded. There are certain types of love that shouldn't be applauded, I'm afraid. But I'm confused. What is the difference between marriage and civil ceremonies? I was married in a registry office, so does this mean that I'm not technically married? Oh, no, you're properly married. Or are we only talking about religious ceremonies, which still have to be sanctioned by a civil piece of paper? In France, you're obliged by law to have a civil ceremony, and then a religious ceremony is a matter of personal choice and holds no weight. Surely the performance of a marriage ceremony is in a religious context is a matter of personal conscience for the celebrant. As I've said, love and relationship to be applauded in all their forms, and people's partnerships should be able to be sanctioned by law. But just as I chose not to have a religious ceremony, surely individual religious people can choose who they're prepared to marry. The Catholic Church won't marry divorcees, for instance. I don't agree with Mr. Murcott, but defend his right to say it. As I said, I'm confused, says Jan. That's a website. I am confused.jan. Hang on, we are tolerant. Try this in other countries such as Saudi Arabia, and the Rainbow Alliance would have their heads or hands cut off. There are far worse religions than Christianity, says Dave. Yeah, well, that's true. Let's go up to Ramsey and see what Wilf makes about same-sex marriage. Hello, Wilf.
My opinion of it, and it's my opinion only, people can do what they like to do in the cover of their own home.
Yeah.
Not spread it about, whatever, you know. But the thing is, if I was in government and I was voting on this, I would vote this through, but with an amendment. And this is my view and my view only.
Yeah.
I wouldn't allow them to have children.
Okay.
And the reason for that is it's the wrong environment to bring kids up in. It's a case of, why have I got two mammies? Why have I got two daddies? Suppose little kids, I've got the, and this was surrogate mothers or adoption or whatever.
Yeah.
Little children tend to wake up at night, go to daddy or mummy's bedroom. Now, supposing they go in there and see whatever they do in there.
Well, that goes for any couple, though, doesn't it?
No. Man and woman, that's different.
Well, not if you're a little child, no. Anyway, okay.
Now, you see this, and then it's a case of, well, what are they doing? What, you know?
All right, but I mean, let's just look at the bigger issue on this, Wilf. You know, would you not accept that as long as a child is brought up in a loving relationship, that it doesn't really matter whether or not it's two blokes, two women, or a man and a woman?
No, definitely not.
You don't. All right. Okay, well, we're all entitled to our views, and you've made it very clear that that's your view on it. And thanks, Will, for your contribution. As a gay man, I'm all for gay marriage. I'm in a civil partnership, but I think the government should bring in the Equality Act for all Manx people. Interesting. I have two gay nephews who are in steady relationships, and I think they should be able to marry if they want. Everyone has the right to their own opinion, but just because the gentleman has his opinion, he shouldn't try to force everyone else to agree with him. No, I don't think he is. He's merely expressing his opinion, I think, Peter Murcott. I don't think he's insisting that everybody agrees with him. As the late, great Frank Zappa said to Tipper Gore and her religious cronies who took him to court about his obscene music, how many people have died practising the Kama Sutra as opposed to the Bible? I like that. Why waste more time and money on the gay marriage issue? It's never going to please everyone, and two people getting married hurts nobody and actually spreads a bit of happiness. Just pass the law allowing gay marriage and move on. I think that's what the government wants to do. Mr. Bell's sexuality has little to do with this. Like him or not, his sexuality hasn't mattered a jot during the rest of his term as Chief Minister. I'm a heterosexual female, but if I was made Chief Minister, one of the first things I would do is change the law on homosexual marriage. That from Amy, thank you. I see that Suggs is marching against homophobia, and for gay marriage, it's madness gone politically correct. I see what you did there, clever play on words. No worries about gay marriage. I reckon that some gay couples are more suited than hetero. Right, okay, it seems an awful rush for government to get this passed, says Jonesy. Until the Middle Ages, marriage was a civil contract between families, states and countries, etc. The Church's input only began around that time. An example of the Bible being somewhat something that's altered over time to suit the times. Plus, I'm not sure that homosexuality is against Christian doctrine, which is a religion of love and inclusion, says Pam. Oh, I think that various testaments are pretty prescriptive about it. Playing devil's advocate here, but can a homosexual union ever produce children? Well, with surrogates, yeah. No, therefore, can it be classed as a natural state? How can a society ever grow if men living together or women living together is encouraged? Marriage traditionally has the state in which a man and woman could live out their life together and children would eventually come from their union. These children would add to community, helping it grow and help support the elderly parents in later life. Something to help it with so many single-parent families. Jeremy Kyle fodder who don't work and just go on to produce more single-parent families, just taking from the state, which is struggling to cope as it is. I think the militant gay lobby will ride roughshod over the rest of us island residents without cause for redress. In a done deal, however, no matter what they call, it will never be marriage. That's John's view. It's a sad state of affairs if gay marriage is the only topic that generates discussion on the island. It's more important that people enjoy a loving, caring relationship. Live and let live. A mantra for us all, maybe.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who contributed to the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or share your thoughts anytime on the Facebook page, Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll find an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, get in touch with us by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.